Boom. So guys, welcome to today's training. We're talking about the absolute dread we feel when we make a mistake. The sense of crushing guilt and shame we feel because maybe our actions hurt someone else's feelings. And the terror we feel in trying to do something new. This is conditioned into us, guys. This is not something we're born with. This is something we are conditioned or trained into experiencing by the experiences we've had in the past when this has happened to us, okay? That's what conditioning really is about. We do a thing, we get a certain response. If that response is either intense enough or recurrent enough, we become conditioned to expect that same kind of response or reaction in the future, and then our body builds either anticipatory anxiety and fear, paralyzation and panic, or enthusiasm, excitement, and interest about it. This is why some things are really exciting to us to think about and why some things are absolutely paralyzing to think about. When it comes to mistakes, especially for those of us that have survived something like the trauma discard, narcissistic abuse, physical abuse, emotional neglect, abandonment, those kind of things, mistakes hold a special power over us, and they motivate us to become perfectionists in our lives. The fear of the mistake isn't really the thing we fear. It's the fear of the consequence. How are they going to react? Are they going to take away love? Are they going to withhold affection, attention, connection, and time? Are they actually literally going to throw us away, abandon us, throw us out the door, discard us? It's a fascinating issue because it's one that paralyzed my life for decades. I was taught from the wee age of 0 on up that mistakes were fatal, that mistakes carried the weight of eternal consequence, that mistakes shouldn't happen because I should know better. Have you been told that one? Especially when you were a kid, like 5 or 4, you should have known better. You're 5. How on earth would you know any better, right? Even as a teenager, it's hard to know better about certain things. And so mistakes were weaponized against us. A natural process of discovery is error, right? We call that a mistake. And something as natural as making a mistake, as creating an error, is turned into a weapon to control and manipulate us because other people either had a great fear of the same consequence happening to us that they feared would happen to them, so they wanted to inoculate and protect us from it, or they wanted to control us. They needed us to be their supply for whatever regulated their well-being, their sense of self, that kind of thing. It's very, very important to understand that a lot of times in toxic, abusive relationships, there is this thing called this consumer supply relationship going on. Basically, you've got the consumer who is the one who takes, consumes, and then you have the supply, which is the one that give. We can apply some different labels to that: narcissistic and codependent. The narcissist would be the consumer, the codependent would be the supplier. And mistakes in this interrupt the consumer's experience or stability of supply. Because one thing that both codependents and narcissistic individuals share in common is they have a very poor sense of what's called object constancy. So very black and white thinking going on, very extreme forms of all or nothing behavior and conceptualization of reality. Basically what that means is nothing, either the thing is or isn't. And so when a mistake happens, it moves into the isn't category, which raises our anxiety, which causes people to lash out, which creates control and perfectionism. And it basically interferes with our natural ability to discover. Because fundamentally, that's really what we're really good at, guys. One of our built-in brilliances is discovery. We go out there and we figure stuff out and we master it, and that allows us to build computers and do these things, put ourselves on the moon and believe things that don't even make sense because our brains are really powerful that way. But when we're in these toxic relationships, we're conditioned to fear the mistake because we think the mistake fundamentally harms the other person. And we're not talking big mistakes like you tried to kill them, or you ran them over with a car, or you pushed them off a cliff. No, we're talking like one time I was made to feel like I was about to destroy my parents' marriage because guess what, guys? I mentioned my dead mother's name. Really? I'm gonna destroy your marriage. I'm here to destroy your marriage because I said Barbara. No, that's what I'm talking about. It's a ludicrous reaction to like, oh, I spilled the milk. Oops, I forgot to do the laundry. Oh, that this didn't happen or that didn't happen. It's an innocuous mistake. It doesn't actually lead to harm. The other flip side to this, especially with parents that are either they come from a very neglected state or they come from an abused state, they have an irrational expectation of their children, especially around responsibility. Like I was given the responsibility at the age of 9 to watch all of my siblings, including a 2-year-old sister, and I wasn't given any guidelines or rules about it. I was just told, watch them until we get home. So we went out for a walk. We went to the store, which was pretty impressive with a 2-year-old since it was a mile walk. And everybody freaked out. But nobody told me the parameters. They just expected me to know, and I was punished for that. But it's just unreasonable when you, as the parent, didn't do your job. See, when we learn to fear mistakes because of the reaction other people give us, and the reactions are irrational because the majority of mistakes, 99.9% of the mistakes we make in life, aren't fatal. They just, sometimes they suck, sometimes it hurts. Even we make a mistake that hurts someone's feelings isn't fatal. It doesn't require us to feel like we have harmed another human being, that we are harmful, that we are bad. And so what we need to do here is first acknowledge that the experiences we've had in making mistakes, the feedback we've gotten is irrational. Irrational. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't line up with a healthy response. Once we start to acknowledge that and start to accept and believe that, our brain will actually switch its mode from fear to curiosity, even advocacy, which is an uplift in the nervous system. Rather than being rigid, we get into a run or freeze mode. We get into a fight mode, which is actually healthy for us in this, because we need to advocate for ourselves and say, no, sorry, but that's not actually what's going on here. Just because I forgot to fill up the gas doesn't mean the world's going to end. You're going to have to live with it. Because it's not a reasonable mistake to be attacked over, to be shamed over, to have verbal or emotional abuse occur. And functionally or fundamentally, abuse should never be a factor in a relationship, period. Mistakes should be responded to with question, with an attempt to understand. And yeah, sometimes we make mistakes that hurt people's feelings. Let's empathize with it. Let's honor it. But they also make mistakes that hurt our feelings. Let's hold them accountable. Let's have a discussion. Let's have some understanding there. Okay? So you'll know if you're dealing with an irrational person because they're going to attempt to shame you and attack you. I've got my little list here. I'm trying to get in order. For making a mistake rather than asking you and getting some understanding. And they will tell you that you made them feel things. You didn't make them feel anything. What was in them, what they feel was already in them. Your behavior rocked their little boat and that's what came out. It's not your fault. Because again, fundamentally, even if you make a mistake and somebody else is affected by it, that does not make you accountable for regulating their feelings. It only makes you accountable for your behavior. That's it. See, we're never accountable for someone else's feelings, period. Our awareness of how they feel doesn't equal responsibility for it. Okay? Remember that. So a healthy response to a mistake is, hey, I don't like this. This hurt. What's going on? Let's talk about it. An irrational response to a mistake is, you're stupid. You've harmed me. This is destroying my life. Why would you do this to me? You're so selfish. You're dumb. Notice it's attacking your character. It's making outrageous claims. It's putting all the onus on you. They're the victim. You're the perpetrator, and they're not really going to be interested in discussing anything. So we got to be mindful. Depending on how they respond to mistakes, tells us whether or not they're a healthy person for us to continue to invest in. So that's what I want you to think about there. Number one. And two, we need to talk about how we heal this. How do we heal our relationship with mistakes? So yesterday I talked about hypervigilance. Now, hypervigilance is a result of this kind of abuse. Okay, we become really, really hyper attuned to the possibilities that are around us. We're not really in tune with the present. We're in tune with our thoughts and all the myriad things it's going to come up with. So we need to do that regulation practice that we talked about yesterday. We need to regulate our nervous system so we can assess that we're actually safe or not. That matters, because with certain people in the States, we're not safe, and with other people, we are. That is what's called contextual awareness. So that's where we want to start. Regulate our nervous system, and then build contextual awareness. Context has three components: the situation, you, and the other person involved in that. And when we understand all three of these variables, we can determine what's really going on, who owns what, and then what we can anticipate happening because of that dynamic. So, for instance, if I make a mistake with my parents, so the context, the situations I made a mistake, and the actors in it are myself and my parents, I know I'm going to get my ass handed to me at some point, usually 7 days later, to a pattern. Okay. Now, if I make a mistake with like, say, friend A, Sally, it's the same mistake, I'm going to get a different result, because I know Sally gives a crap about how I feel. She cares about my feelings, and she trusts in my goodwill. She believes that the mistake is likely innocuous, and she just wants to understand what's going on. She doesn't default like a narcissistic, abusive person would to the point of view of, you're trying to destroy my life, okay? You know, in codependency, sometimes we will default, if somebody makes a mistake towards us, we'll default to, I might be abused, I might be harmed in this. So we'll actually take a state of, ooh, I need to defend myself. So we need to be mindful of that and look at the context and see if that individual that made the mistake actually deserves the context of being a perpetrator. That really, really matters to us, because it helps our brain stop doing this all or nothing thinking, and it breaks it into sections. It's like, oh, I can deal with this person this way because I know what they're going to do. This person will do this, that person will do that. That way we know what to anticipate if we make a mistake with them. And two, we know who we want to build relationships with, because we want relationships with people that care about us, that they honor us, that respect us and think the best of us, that have what's called goodwill or generosity involved with it, okay? So we need to understand the context, that one, who we're dealing with and what the situation is, and two, in that we can also ask the question, you know, am I reacting to the situation based on a previous experience, or am I actually seeing the present situation as it is? So when we can discern between those two things, then we're helping our brain heal from living in the context of the past trauma and connecting with the present and seeing that it's actually different. And that lowers our stress level. It lowers our level of arousal and alert, and allows us to connect back to our peace, our calm, our regulated state, so we can rest, be creative, and play again. Okay? Very, very important. That also allows us, with this new context awareness, it helps us normalize mistake making. It's okay to make mistakes. You don't need permission to make mistakes. You don't need my permission. I encourage you to go out there and do it. I've already made several mistakes in this live today. I made 4 mistakes earlier. It's just their abundance of mistakes. So what? None of it has done anything to anybody. It's not even, I've made mistakes with people and it hasn't hurt them. Or some people I've hurt incidentally. I've had one client call me up a couple of weeks ago. She's like, you said this thing and it gut punched me. And I'm like, ooh, let's talk about that. And we did, and we worked it out because mistakes happen, but it's not fatal. That's the trick here, guys. We have the right to make mistakes. Remember this concept of personal autonomy. If you've followed me for a while, you know, you've likely heard me say this term, personal autonomy, and it's the right to self-govern. It's the right to occupy space. One of those spaces is making mistakes. Own it. It's all good. Mistakes are your ally. They're your teachers. They're going to help you succeed, help you get out there and kick some butt. Okay. So we normalize mistake making. We use it to our advantage while regulating our nervous system. So if you want to learn how to regulate really deep, check out yesterday's video on hypervigilance. And then acknowledge the impact of the mistakes and what it really created. Like I have to do this for my brain because my brain needs to see it on paper. It needs to see quantity for it to believe it. So I will write down the mistakes and I'll write down the impacts that I made like during the week, and I realized it meant nothing. And then my brain's like, yeah, I don't have to believe mistakes anymore. That's good. That helps us normalize mistake making, and it helps us see things in reality in the present rather than being out there and stuck in la la land or in a past trauma. Which brings me to the last thing we need to do if we're really paralyzed and making mistakes. We need to get closure on the core events that taught you to be that way. And we accomplish that using the closure technique. I teach that through the Get Closure Now system and the training that I run. And in 4 days, this coming Monday, 5 days, we are starting that class for 2019. The next one will be in January of 2020, so you're going to have to wait. But I've got some seats left. I want you to jump in, apply for your seat. Once you apply, you're going to get an email from me. We'll schedule a time. We'll get it done. What I teach you in Get Closure Now is how to regulate your nervous system. So I'm going to teach you how to feel calm again, how to have a peace of mind, how to relax in any situation you're in using a specific set of tools that I'm going to train you in how to use. And they're very useful. They're very easy. I'm doing one right now. You have no idea I'm doing it. And relax the body. Second thing I'm going to teach you is how we're going to get closure with that specific trauma in your life using what's called the closure technique. And then you and I will have a one-on-one session where we go through the technique together and you accomplish closure. And the third thing I'm going to teach you is how to nurture your needs using a process I call the nurture process. That way you have the result of going, oh, I can calm myself, I can fill myself with love or with peace, or with safety, or with joy or enthusiasm, using a very simple, it's like about a 15-minute meditation that just, boom, puts it in there, okay? Okay, guys, if that sounds good to you, you want to break through your trauma, you want to be free of the hypervigilance, you want to be free of the terror of making mistakes, you would like to have your life back, then Get Closure Now is for you, because that's what I made it for, is to help you accomplish that. So all you need to do to apply for your spot is go to healyourtraumanow.com, click the link above if you're on Facebook, the link below if you're on YouTube, and apply for your spot. Put your information in there, and then you and I will have a short consult call to make sure this is the appropriate direction for you. Then I'll invite you to sign up if it is, and we'll run with it. So we start here on Monday. Okay, guys? I appreciate you being here. Let me know what you got out of today's video. I hope it made a difference, because I know for me, answers or making mistakes have terrified me. And this is how I have worked it out for me. And this is how I teach my clients, students at Codependency Confronts, Get Closure Now, how to make that happen too. Okay? So you guys can be free of your mistakes now. You can go out there and you can actually create a life you want. So let me know how this works for you. You guys have a good night, and I will see you guys tomorrow for live Q&A. Bye-bye, guys.